It's in a book.
Read your books.
All right. Should be good here. We have a crowded house for a morning episode with like nobody watching because it's like 10 in the morning, and who's on YouTube at 10 in the morning? Nobody. But welcome anyways. I'm sure some people will watch it later. This is the
Euro people.
Yeah. We reviewed a book written in the 1872 by Sheridan LeFanu, and LeFanu. I don't know why I'm mispronouncing his name. And it's sort of a horror book, pretty well written little horror story. It was serialized back in the day, and it's about vampires and cute girl vampires, to be exact. And people who like Yuri these days say it's like one of the earliest works of the Yuri genre. So if that floats your boat, I recommend you go read it, and we're going to talk about it today. Let me get my notes up. Alrighty. So it sort of starts really getting you into the setting right away. It has the sort of setup of, oh, well, the character's English, but they're living in this mysterious country.
Well, the whole setup of the book is that, like, I'm pretty sure when he was first selling it off, it was supposed to be, like, semi-believable, because he has, like, the introductory of, like, when I found these
It's
notes.
a frame story, yeah. It's supposed to be, oh, well.
Yeah. It's the 1800s version of the, of the Blair Witch.
Exactly, and it's published in a sort of a zine for the Victorian Englishwoman, and it's supposed to appeal to that sort of sentiment. So sort of this frame story is like, oh, well, I found these letters from this young woman, and she lives in this mysterious country, and they have like a tiny castle to their name, and they're doing okay, and then all these things happen to them. And I think throughout the entire thing, you don't learn the name of the protagonist, or their family, or their father. You
learn her name.
Yeah, you learn her name, but
at some point, yeah.
Nobody else's name.
Laura. They say it like twice.
Oh yeah, Laura. Yeah. That's right. But
it's super not important.
Yeah, I almost didn't notice. Well, I actually did not notice what her name was.
I managed to forget
when I reread
so
it. Yeah, because they kind of de-emphasize it. But this Laura woman is living in this sort of mysterious country, Citria, is what the author goes with. Oh, Styria, Styria. Yeah.
That's what I got.
It's supposed to be an Eastern
Mysteria.
country.
It's Syria with a T. Yeah.
Like that's what I got.
Some area next to Transylvania or Bulgaria, something like that.
Like Austria, I think, is the neighboring country you live in.
Yeah, Austria. Well, I mean, it's not a real country, but
but it's just to establish the geography.
Yeah, the protagonist's father worked for the Austrian service in the 1800s, which will make you a little bit of money. And so it has all these descriptions about that, and it's like, oh, well, I speak English because you're reading in English Lamel. That sort of read off as contrived. So I don't know if the people who were reading it in the 1800s were immersed at that point, but the following part where it then talks about sort of the winding roads and the forest with like the huge drop into the lake and all this other stuff. It was a pretty good description to get you set up for the sort of picturesque setting.
Yeah. Very isolated place.
Yeah, and it even talks about it sets up like the plot for later, and it's like, oh, well, there's this ruined village that surrounds it and sort of thing. And
I mean, the whole
the castle's ruined and stuff.
Yeah. The whole opening just kind of reminded me of Darkest Dungeon, if you ever watched that opening, except like less craziness, I guess.
Yeah. And so at a young age, about the age of 6, living in this castle, the protagonist Laura has a dream, or maybe it's reality. We never know for sure, but on the side of reality, that a beautiful young woman goes into her room, lies next to her, and then bites her chest with strange puncture marks, and then runs away once she yells in fear. And everyone runs into the room and says, "Oh well, obviously there couldn't have been a young woman. We didn't see anybody leave or show up." And she gets like deathly afraid for a bit after that.
One thing to the story that adds like a little bit of creepiness is that there's kind of like the handmaidens kind of whisper. They're like, the bed was warm. There's definitely someone laying on that bed.
I think that was pretty effective.
Yeah.
And the protagonist writes, "Oh well, this is like my first memory as a child. It's like so fucking creepy, creep me out."
Well, it was such a crazy thing that happened that like everything else kind of like she kind of just forgets of it.
Yeah,
because that's such a vivid moment, or at least that's how I got it.
Which makes sense. All right, and then chapter 2. So the protagonist gotten over her attack at the age of 6, and then she's just sort of dawdling around. As sort of a, what age is she around? Teenager? I don't think they specify. 19?
19.
Yeah. All right, so at the age of around 19, she's just dawdling around her castle, hanging out with her dad, talking about shit. They're just talking about random things, walking down their big old castle. And a strange carriage is just like running by, and then the carriage has an accident and crashes. And then there's these strange people in the carriage with like they're very pale. They look kind of torn clothes and stuff. And then this young woman is sort of thrown from the carriage and wounded. And then the head of the proceedings, a sort of mysterious woman with a dark face, sort of says, "Oh well, we gotta go. We're in a secret mission. We gotta keep moving, and so you better take care of my daughter who got injured here. She has a weak constitution. Take care of her. See ya." And she just skedaddles away after like saying that, "Oh well, don't question me or my secret mission." And then sort of conveniently, her daughter, this beautiful young girl, is deposited as a friend to the main character, Laura. Oh, I guess before that I forgot.
Yeah, a quick note that the guy that her dad that worked for the military is apparently friends with a general, and
yes.
The general and his daughter was supposed to like show up and visit for like I don't know. Like
that very week, the Laura had a friend who's the daughter of a general who neighbors them like a few miles away, and the general and his daughter were supposed to come over for a visit. Oh, a niece. Okay.
Yeah, she croaked though, so couldn't make it.
So she died of mysterious illness. And then the general went off on like some sort of world search or whatever caused it, and this sort of disturbed Laura, and they're sort of talking about how this could have happened when the carriage comes in and crashes, and then they get like this sort of replacement person, this mysterious person who gets deposited upon them.
Sorry.
And it's a pretty interesting scene. And then later you learn sort of the nature of all the people in that carriage, which is interesting as well. The false flag. All right, so being nice people, Laura's father agrees to nurse this stranger back to health.
But I remember she didn't want to leave her there in the beginning, wasn't it?
Yeah, she didn't want to leave her there. It was all kind of an act, but
right. She was kind of posing as if she wanted to.
Well,
keep
it was
going
me.
with her
We got to keep going, but she's gonna be too frazzled to ride at the speed that we want to go.
Like it will tax your chivalry too much, sir. That kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, the classic bait.
Yeah.
So falling for the bait, the father's like, "Oh well, if the general's niece is dead, I guess we should use her as sort of as a replacement." He doesn't say it in like those terms, but that's basically what he says.
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Okay, so we have this new kawaii girl. It's gonna hang out with you, and that'll be great." And then chapter 3. So they sort of discuss the strange proceedings and like where these people could have come from, what could their secret mission be, and all that stuff. But they obviously the girl is sworn to secrecy, so she doesn't say anything. And then Laura rushes into her room, and then she tells the girl tells her name is Carmilla, and then that once they see each other in the room, Laura's like, oh shit, you're the weird girl who I saw years ago when I was like 6 years old. And then Carmilla's like, oh, you're the weird girl I saw in a dream 12 years ago. And they're like, oh shit, we're like BFFs. And Carmilla lewdly holds Laura's hand, and they're like, oh, we're going to be great friends.
Not a red flag at all there.
They lewdly put each other around each other. Their arms.
Yeah. And so they're sort of, flirting about. It's very, probably very lascivious for the day it was written, back in 1872.
Oh, yeah.
And so they have these solemn promises that they're going to be friends, and then they go to bed at that point. All right, chapter 4. So it opens with the protagonist talking about, oh man, Carmilla is just so pretty. I love playing with her hair. It's just so great. Playing with her hair.
Hot.
She's
great.
so hot, yeah.
That's what's happening.
And then she describes how Carmilla, the person who left Carmilla with them, said, oh well, she sometimes has like seizures of madness, but she's not insane. Don't worry. And so she'll be hanging out with Laura, and then Carmilla will just like suddenly break out into strange poetry about how she wants to like basically die with her and how much she loves her and like rub all over her and stuff. And this freaks Laura out, but she's like, oh, she must just be a little sick. It's okay. So it scares her, but she never sort of like fully rejects it. So it's just sort of like this weird habit her new friend has of like rubbing up against her and saying, oh man, I love you so much.
And saying they want to die together. Oh, it's no big deal. Whatever.
Yeah, MBD, just a strange illness. It's fine.
One thing I thought was
Eccentric.
hilarious was that she fucking like compares women to larvae in a book at some point when she's making that speech about dying together. It was so funny.
That was quoted out of a
that's
different
true,
book,
yeah.
apparently.
Yeah.
So I thought that was funny, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So
later, when the protagonist is talking about this, about the weird sort of romantic behavior and how it creeps her out, they're hanging out, and there's a funeral hymn. So there's a funeral procession going by the castle for like a local noble peasant who died of a mysterious cause of being attacked in the night and then fell mysteriously ill. There's like a local peasant in a funeral hymn, and there's these people singing this religious hymn, and Carmilla's like, shut the fuck up. This hymn is so bad. I don't want to listen to it at all. She gets really angry,
Starts reeing.
she starts reeing. And the protagonist is like, oh, well, this is completely out of character. Carmilla never gets angry. And she starts like fedora tipping and reeing at this hymn. It's like, stop. Like, why are you doing this? I don't want to listen to this. And this affects some mystery.
Laura even starts singing the hymn too.
Yeah.
Pisses her off even more.
Exactly. And then the only other instance which Laura says that Carmilla gets angry is there's a sort of traveling peddler who sells various superstitious wares and like has a little magic show.
Yeah.
yeah, the hunchback dude.
And then he sees Carmilla from the window, and he can tell because he apparently has just fucking superhuman eyesight. You can see that she has like long teeth. Her teeth are pretty fang-like, and spoiler. And and the peddler is like takes out his dentistry tools and is like, "Hey, should I fix your teeth for you?" And Carmilla's like, "Holy shit! This guy just insulted me.
How dare he?
How dare he insult my kawaii vampire teeth?" And basically, at other points, Carmilla will fedora tip. Well, people will be discussing.
She buys the charm off of the.
She buys the
the
charm,
hunchback.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then at the end of the chapter, the lord of the castle, Laura's father, is talking with various people about the attacks on young women who seem to be ailed by a mysterious assailant in the night, and they fall ill and die, which is a victim of the funeral procession and other people in the village. And the protagonist's father is like, oh well, we should pray to God to help us here. And then Carmilla's like fedora tips and is like, God, this is all natural. Disease is all natural. You got to solve it naturally, bro. Fedora tip. And then
it's the vapors of the amulet. It drives things away.
Yeah. Is she and then she sort of confides in Laura and says, does your father scare us of such things? And then Laura's like confused, like, what are you talking about? All right. Then what are we on? We were in chapter 5.
Right, the pictures.
All right,
the
so
paintings.
So they're hanging out in the castle, and then a sort of painting restorer that they hired comes back, and they have all the paintings that were hanging in the castle, and they all got restored. And then one of them is a splitting image of Carmilla, and it's the name of the nearby ruined family. So a certain Karnstein Echo. The what was it, Marcilla or Malarca?
Malarsa, I think.
Malarca Karnstein.
No, Malarca is the one at the end, I think.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the one in the same.
Marcilla is the one on the painting.
All right, yeah. So Marcilla Kernstein is on the painting, and it's like, oh wow, it looks exactly like you, Carmilla. It even has the birthmark on your like neck. And Carmilla's like, oh wow, that's pretty quaint. And despite seeing this, Carmilla immediately rushes out with Laura outside into the moonlight, and they're like doing the weird romantic soliloquies again. And Carmilla and Laura's even taken by this, like, oh wow, isn't she so pretty? But then she's like, oh wait, I can't do this right now. And then they go back inside after a second of panic. But sort of, even despite seeing a painting splitting image, it doesn't raise any alarm bells among anyone else, or anyone really.
Tried to get her dad's attention with it. He's like, oh yeah,
he's like, yeah, who
looks
cares?
like it. Yeah, whatever.
Which is strange. It's eerie manga from the 1800s. It's pretty great. It's pretty spoopy, I guess. All right, so in chapter 6, Carmilla relates the original time at a ball. Well, okay, at this point, it's obvious to the audience and anyone reading it. Carmilla's a vampire. She's got fangs. She hates funeral hymns. She has these weird fits. She's super pale. Pretty obvious. And
the whole book is pretty.
It's in your face. You find it,
especially by today's standards.
Exactly. But I'm sure for Victorian ladies back in the 1800s, they're like, oh, can't you? Oh, this mystery is so engaging. Like they see they see that the painting's name is an anagram, and they're like, oh shit, what a mystery.
Oh, they figured it out earlier. They're like, oh my god, ladies, look.
Yeah, this is Twilight from 200 years ago. It's pretty great.
Twilight. No.
Yeah.
But it's better written.
Much better. So Carmilla relates the original time at a ball where she was attacked and turned into a vampire. And she sort of kind of alludes that she almost wants to turn the protagonist to a vampire as well in this chapter, but it's sort of very alluded to, and she ends up not doing that for various reasons. And so they sort of talk about various things, and Carmilla and Laura's confused, like, hey, you're pretty young. How can you not remember your ball? And Carmilla's like, oh, it was so long ago. Sort of breaking cover, and then they're like, oh, well, we're good friends. And Carmilla's like, oh, well, I'd lock my door. I'm pretty paranoid. And then Laura also proceeds to lock her door and do some paranoid things. And then later, Laura goes to bed, and despite locking her door, she's attacked by this mysterious monster who sort of slithers up in the darkness and like bites her. And this scares the bejeebies out of her, of course. And the description, sort of this shadowy darkness figure climbing up, and you can't see anything. Everything else is like dark and unable to be perceived. It sort of fits the description for sleep paralysis, and almost all of these superstitions, or about like a good majority of superstitions, come from sleep paralysis. So like UFOs, vampires, demons, alien abductions. And if you ever experience it, you can see almost immediately that it's like the same thing. But you basically your EG rhythm falls out of line. Like, so you're in a state where you're supposed to be paralyzed, but you wake up. So your consciousness is awake, but then your body is in the paralyzed state. And then often there'll be some sort of like hallucination of an attacker while you're lying in bed as your EEG state tries to wake you out of this sort of paralyzed state. And for people who get it, it can be very scary. But it's for in the ancient times before we had science, that I could analyze brain waves and tell that, oh well, your EEG wave is out of sync here, and now you're having some bad paralysis. People attributed all sorts of supernatural stuff, and that includes vampires, demons, incubi, all these other things.
Witches, all kinds of fuckery.
Yeah. And so I would say the writer's description is probably pulling from a superstition, and then that superstition is probably predicated on that sleep paralysis, which I suffer from a lot. So I like whenever stories intertwine things based off of sleep paralysis. There's a lot of stuff. UFO abductions too is an interesting one. All right, so after having her episode of being attacked by the shadowy figure, Carmilla and the protagonist discuss their interpretation. So she goes to Carmilla's room, and Carmilla's like, oh, well, I got attacked too. And they're like, oh, shit. And Carmilla's like, oh, you better grab that charm. It really works. It's like fumigated in this weird thing, and I slept like a rock because of that charm. And Laura's like, oh, yeah, cool. And she goes, gets her charm, and like sleeps like a rock. And then she can sort of... she's sleeping well, but she's getting sicker and sicker, and she keeps having these visions of weird things coming in and out of her room. And oh yeah, and if it's not obvious already, when she had the vision of the attack, the vision of Carmilla walking slowly out of the room and then closing the door appeared. So it's like, okay, it should be pretty obvious by now. And then
it was all covered in blood in one of the visions too. And
yeah,
at the end, I think
that was later. But the
what was interesting about the other attack is that she could like open and close like locked doors. They'd still be like locked.
Yeah,
which I thought was creepy. So
spooky.
Yeah,
I just kind of thought she like Danny Phantomed her way through the doors. To be honest.
Yeah. All right. Well, Carmilla, sort of as Laura's illness is getting worse, and she's like, getting sicker and sicker, and almost on the verge of death. Carmilla's like, oh yeah, and then she starts doing more of those weird romantic soliloquies, where she rubs up against Laura and says, "Oh, we should die together," and gets all touchy feely. And this is and Laura notices this, is like, huh, that's weird. But it doesn't really doubt Carmilla at this point, which is hilarious. And then before the end of the chapter, Laura has a terrible vision where she sees that Carmilla is at the foot of her bed, and Carmilla is covered completely head to toe in blood. And she's like, oh no. And so she bursts out of her room, goes across to where Carmilla's supposed to be sleeping, and they get all worked up and has the servants break down the door when nobody answers. And then, lo and behold, Carmilla's gone from her room. And like, oh shit, we gotta find her. And then they search all around the castle. Chapter 8, they search all around the castle in a fright. And eventually, after a long search, they just look back in the room, and Carmilla's like just sleeping on the couch. And they're like, oh well, how did that happen? And basically the protagonist's father comes back in and is like, well, it must be sleepwalking. It's got to be sleepwalking. All of it is easily explained.
This whole elaborate story.
It's all sleepwalking, bro. And and so Carmilla's back, and it's like, oh well, that was silly. And then they're back to hanging out, despite Laura seeing her covered in blood and all this stuff.
Fine.
It's fine.
Problem.
Yeah. All right. So chapter 9, a doctor is called. So because Laura's getting sick, she's having some of the same symptoms the other people around the various villages had, and they died mysteriously. And so the doctor's called, and then the doctor looks at her neck, and they see the weird bite marks around the neck, and they're like, "Oh wow, that's weird." And the sort of the doctor and the father are sort of hush hush and talking about various things, but they don't really come to a good solution. And the eventually, though, after talking to the doctor, the father goes and meets with the general. The general who had his daughter killed, and they go meet at the nearby ruins of the Karnstein estate, which used to rule the country and has this like ruined village next to it. All right, so then.
Well, they meet him on the way, isn't it?
Yeah, they meet on the way.
Yeah, it was kind of luck that they ran into.
Luck? I thought it was planned though.
No, it wasn't.
No, because it was because I thought Carmilla would be with them, but she apparently rode with the other lady later on.
Yeah, that confused me too. There was apparently she was not in the same carriage or something.
That was just convenient so they could give the backstory.
Yeah, exactly. But when they said they were going to the ruins, I thought, oh well, they'll go with Carmilla, but I guess she waited.
I think the only reason they the conveniently wait is because she never wakes up until afternoon, which they had established up to this point.
That they left her at their house and they just went to meet the general, and so Laura knows the general, knew the general's niece. I think she'd never met her.
It wasn't to meet the general; it was just to go to the ruins.
They were going to the ruins, but they met the general. To do a picnic, but they met the general along the way.
Huh. I was sort of skimming it again because I already read it, but I guess I missed that detail. That's interesting that it was just luck, but I mean, I guess that works.
The general was even going to the ruins as well, or was he?
That's why they met up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so the general meets up with them at the ruins, and he starts talking about how all these terrible things happened and this weird knowledge that he knows. And he begins relating a story, and the story begins to sound very much like the same story that Laura is part of. So General talks about how they went to this ball, this sort of dance, and then these strange pale people showed up, and there was a mysterious woman, and she had to drop her mysterious daughter off on the general, and the general's like, oh well, yeah, I got to take care of your daughter, bro.
Just like any other party, you can just go there and pick up ladies, I guess.
And once again, the woman does not tell anything of her origin to the general, and this greatly intrigues him. And I think that almost that bait of the mystery is why he agrees to take on the daughter, to maybe find out more about this mystery, and he gets baited into taking care of her. And then it's this very beautiful.
And they were hot. They
were hot.
Also,
oh yeah.
Yeah. So he was kind of smitten by their.
And her name is Malarka. A very curious name. So the young girl they take care of is named Malarka, and so they're taking care of Malarka in the house. And the general's niece and Malarka are great friends, and they're hanging out all the time. And they sort of leave her there, and then they hang out, and they're like, oh, okay, this is cool. And then chapter 12, sort of Malarka is sort of flattering the general and his niece, and they sort of get along really well, and the general is almost charmed by Malarka, who should be at this point pretty obviously Carmilla, is charming them, and with various stories and her beauty and such, and obviously gets to go back to their house. And then it just goes on, and it basically recounts the exact same happenstance, where they become friends, and then she gets attacked at the night, and this mysterious illness, becomes ill, and then the general's like, well, no, my niece is ill. This is too much. Someone might be attacking her. And then the general hides in the cupboard of his niece's room, and then waits for his sword. And then, lo and behold, Carmilla breaks through the door, or like phantoms through it, and like attacks his niece. And so the general bursts from the cupboard and tries to slice at Carmilla with a sword, but Carmilla just vampire backstep dodges, and manages to get away. And so then after that, the niece dies from her vampire afflicted illness, and the general's like, oh shit, now I gotta scour the earth to try and find a vampire slayer, or some method to kill vampires. And so he goes and does that. And so by this time, the story's basically been fully told to Laura, and Laura's just sitting there really scared, sitting on the bench. And then Carmilla shows up at the ruins. He's standing there. And then a woodsman who comes by, who tells them, I guess before that, a woodsman from the village.
The woodsman was there first.
Yeah. The woodsman from the village comes by and tells them that, well, this village had a vampire problem, and we had to hire this crazy vampire slayer baron to come kill them all, and he did, and then he destroyed all of the vampires in the village. It became deserted anyways, but all the vampires got destroyed, supposedly. And then Carmilla comes by the ruins and sees everyone and is standing there, and the woodsman's like, oh shit, a vampire. And he rushes
the woodsman left before that. That's how didn't he?
Yeah, he did. It's
he left the axe and then left to get the baron of some. So it was the general. It was the general running with the axe. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah, the general got the axe. Yeah,
the general
sees her and instantly is just
took the woodsman axe and then flies at her with a rage, but Carmilla just dodges and runs away.
Grabs his arm and he drops the axe like a pussy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The grip of a vampire is numbing, as they say.
Right. There was that part. Still.
Yeah. All right. So then after that, let's see.
Laura's kind of shaken by the whole thing. She's like, "What the fuck just happened?"
Yeah, that's when she because she was still when Carmilla showed up, she was like, oh look, it's Carmilla, she was smiling. It's
like, oh hey Carmilla, and then the general comes and attacks her with an axe, and she's like, oh shit. And then they sort of cart Laura away. They bring her back to the house, and then they get together with the Baron, the vampire slayer who came to the village of the Karnsteins before, and they very grotesquely open Carmilla's coffin. So Marcilla Karnstein's.
That was the whole thing too. Yeah. By the way, they had to find the tomb.
They had to dig up Marcilla's coffin, so they dig around and they find it, and they open it and they see Carmilla there sleeping in basically a bath of blood. She's hanging out in her comfy coffin. And then they
proved that she was a vampire.
And then they stab her through the heart with a stake.
That was the definitive proof, not.
All right, okay. Now we know she's a vampire. Now we understand. And then
for sure.
And so they stab her through the heart with the stake, behead her, and then burn her to death. And this sort of ends the story. And
super anticlimactically.
Yeah. And the protagonist is like, okay, well, I wasn't there to see that, but I was related to me that they killed Carmilla. I'm like, okay, yeah. And the protagonist is like, oh, I'm still scared of all this. This is a very scary experience. But then her last sentence is like, oh, well, sometimes I'll have nightmares of monster Carmilla attacking me, and then sometimes I'll remember all the great times we had playing together. And that ends the book. Which is interesting. So even despite knowing she's a terrible monster, Laura's like, oh, well, I still have good memories.
For a female.
Remember the good times.
Yeah. And so I guess we could talk about the sort of when the book was written and how the sort of supernatural tropes are sort of used to justify the lascivious content, right? So if you wrote a smutty book before at that time about girls being better than friends, you would run into some trouble with religious authorities. So if you make one of the girls a monster and then have her violently die at the end, you can get away with a lot. And certainly, I think that for the 1800s, this book gets away with a lot.
Yeah, definitely.
Fitting end for a female homo vampire. I mean, yeah. Well, I guess that's the end for all vampires.
A stake through the
And
chest.
all homos back in those days, probably.
That too, yeah.
Treated the same way. You had to stake them through the heart, cut their head off, and burn them. Same thing, same process.
Yeah. And so there's pretty graphic descriptions of female on female action. I'm not like anything completely lewd, but
super graphic details.
Kissing and hand holding, and like rubbing people's
Embracing.
hair, caressing. I mean, like, whoa, dude, that's on another level, bro. For 1872.
Lewd, just lewd.
Stirs one loins.
So they managed to the author LeFanu managed to sort of get away with this by making it a monster story, and sort of all the LGBT barbecue scholars and advocates are like, oh well, this story is like they had to put in the horror tropes to hide the lesbianism, which I don't know about that. Maybe that's the case. Maybe he just wanted to write a fucking lewd hand-holding female on female book, and then
he did write mostly ghost stories, I think.
Yeah, but he wrote horror stories. But maybe he figured out this would be a different type of horror story, a different genre, and that he could get away with it because it's a horror story. It's not a romantic story, not at all. Wink, wink. And it's interesting in that way. And I think the prose is actually very readable. So it's also very short. It's like almost a little over 100 pages.
This is a really good introduction to any kind of vampire literature.
Yeah. It's written in 1872, but doesn't really feel that way. Well, it does feel that way, but it's not hard to read. It was serialized for average people.
Are we gonna read Dracula next?
Dracula? I don't know. We're not going to do the same stuff at once, but maybe we'll come back and go read Dracula. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, that was a joke.
Yeah. Oof. I kind of wanted to read, what was that book that Psych recommended me? Golden Spices. Although that's just because I'm like an economic autist. Apparently it's the book that Spice and Wolf is based off of. It's about medieval economics.
Yeah, the fall of feudalism and the rise of capitalism in medieval Europe.
Subtitled Golden Spices. Pretty interesting. I wanted to read it because my economics. And so it's interesting how some of the I don't know. I guess, are you guys Yuri scholars? Are you really dyed in the wool for Yuri fiction?
I mean, I've read a lot of Yuri manga, but I don't go out of my way to search for it by any means.
Okay. It was kind of funny how some of the similar tropes played out, even back in this 1872 horror story. With the one girl being lascivious, and then the other girl being like, "Hey, don't do that," but not saying exactly no. It basically a tsundere.
I mean, yeah, it's very cute girl likes cute girl type.
Yeah, it felt like a manga. You could definitely adapt this to a manga pretty easily.
I would actually enjoy that manga a lot. I feel like that would be pretty fun. It'd be a nice little romantic comedy bullshit Yuri manga. Probably have a couple funny moments, and then you just kill one of the characters at the end, super hardcore.
Yeah, I think it would actually almost fit with current sort of manga trends if it ever got made into one. But yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's it definitely, you could tell it was written in that period and has a lot of stuff from that period, and I think the language is quite nice, the prose especially.
I liked reading this, just if anything, just because it's a change up. I get used to reading a lot of
modern stuff.
Yeah, modern fantasy especially, which has it's almost has a template at this point where you read the books, and you can kind of just go into autopilot mode and just read 4 or 5 books not quickly, but just at the same speed. You plow through the shitty parts and you read through the good parts, just basically the same way. Whereas this one, you have to focus a little bit more and like try to understand the sentence structure, because they use a lot of commas and hyphens and how they go into like a little addendum here and there about what they just said.
Yeah, but it's still I still think it's not hard to read, and
No, by no
I would
means.
recommend anybody, even if you think reading is a chore, try it out for a bit. You can find it by the Gutenberg Press online for free, the whole text for free. You don't have to buy anything. You can just read it at your leisure. And I'm almost interested in more works by this Sheridan LeFanu, because I quite like his prose.
I mean, if anything, this book, it taught me a couple new words. So,
Yeah, I
Like
found myself
schloss.
googling a lot of words.
yeah.
Yeah, same.
Like what? What words did you guys were surprised
First of
by?
all,
I don't remember,
schloss.
but
Like I
it
said,
was-
schloss.
Montebank, which is apparently a peddler of bullshit.
Yeah, that one I had to also look up, but Schloss I knew before as a synonym for castle.
I did not. Yeah, I mean, there was a couple. I don't really remember what they are now at this point.
Had to look up languid.
Yeah, that's just sort of pale, slow,
Like weak,
weak.
fatigued.
Yeah, tired.
Oh yeah, gesticulating. I didn't know that one. It's apparently, especially, what was it? To emphasize words, apparently. Gesticulating. That was a weird one.
Gesticulating. I've heard that word before, but yeah, I didn't know exactly what it meant.
Heard it in context and kind of understood it, but didn't know the actual meaning.
Yeah, I can just double click them in this thing and it'll show me, but you get it in context a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I understood most of the words in this. Like, there's just a couple that like I said, I don't remember what any of them are now. I'm trying to see, but I'm not gonna find any.
Yeah. And so I'm gonna look up exactly where this was published. We can talk about that a little bit. I'm pretty sure it was serialized.
Were any of you surprised by anything in the book?
When I first read it, I mean, the thing is, I did tell all of you it was a vampire book before you read it, but I mean, you would probably known by like chapter 3 or 4. So
Yeah, it was
it's
pretty
not
obvious.
Yeah.
I mean, you read that first chapter with the lady sitting beside her in bed, and you kind of get what's up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Like,
it's not
subtle.
Yeah, it's very on the ball. Like the first chapter, oh wow, she sees this girl and she bites her in the chest with 2 little fangs. Lewd.
I mean, have you guys read any other vampire books?
well,
not at all.
Not like a connoisseur
but-
of vampire fiction.
I mean,
But
I'm
I just brought that up because I was surprised because I thought they were gonna have like Carmilla make one final play at Lara, like to eat her and stuff. But yeah, that never.
no, I
happened.
feel like it would have been a lot better if like something happened, but like I said, it's a very anticlimactic.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it was
kind
just
of agree.
anticlimactic.
Exactly. I thought it would be much more of a showdown, but
Like,
it was
she
just
runs
the
away.
dropping of the axe. It was,
Yeah.
And
Well, yeah, all right, so here it is. Carmilla was serialized in the literary magazine The Dark Blue in late 1871, early 1872, and was reprinted in LeFanu's short story collection In a Glass Darkly. Comparing the works of 2 illustrators to the story. Oh, yeah. So it appeared in this literary magazine. So let me look that up. The Dark Blue literary magazine.
I mean, the only other vampire, like I guess you'd call it a series that I've ever read is Hellsing, the manga. So quite a big contrast, to say the least.
Yeah.
Not nearly as much Yuri in Hellsing.
So yeah, it was published
I'll say.
in 1871 to 1873. So it wasn't published that long, but it had a lot of authors in it, besides LeFanu. And it had like poetry and other stuff. So I imagine like people, like either like commoners or the middle class people or upper class ladies would just pick up like this magazine and read all the literature in it. they would read the serialization of Carmilla over 2 years when it was serialized, like, almost like a manga. So it literally is the original Yuri manga.
Sounds fun.
Yeah, I don't think there's magazines like that anymore that just like collect literary works, or there might
Short
be.
stories.
Yeah, no.
No, there's definitely
That's
not. Because
not
you
in
have
English.
those- Like you have the internet for that kind of thing. Like
Yeah,
that's a very like late 1800s, early 1900s where you read a lot of these like serial short stories and stuff. That's where
Yeah,
like a
and
lot
Pulp
of the
Fiction magazines, and
Yeah.
that's what gave rise to the comic book, actually.
so it kind of like transferred its what it was over.
no bayonet wielding killer priests. No. Yeah. I'm surprised
Pretty exciting.
that Carmilla hasn't shown up as like a character in Japanese memory, because they love recycling Western shit, and she
I'm
sort of
surprised that Carmilla isn't more of a thing.
yeah.
Like
Yeah, it's kind of obscure.
it is obscure. Like I
Like-
never heard of Carmilla. Like
I mean,
that's definitely gonna be a name that I use from now on when I like name characters in games.
it's completely overshadowed by Dracula. I
For
think
sure.
that's what the issue is.
I
mean,
think
It was
she's
written
in
before Dracula,
Castlevania
though.
as an enemy.
Well,
I
yeah,
heard.
but I mean, like it came before Dracula.
It came before
but-
Dracula and even inspired Bram Stoker.
Yeah, but nobody remembers like the influences of a work. They just remember the work.
Maybe he got
Yeah.
buried by scholarship because it was gay.
Actually say that Dracula was inspired by Carmilla.
Yeah.
He did. Oh, cool.
Interesting.
So yeah,
Oh,
so
when
it says
Dracula
Stoker posthumously published the short story Dracula's Guest, which is a deleted first chapter to Dracula that shows a more obvious debt to Carmilla than the main story.
Gotcha. That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
So this is sort of the precursor to Dracula, and Dracula is secretly a Yuri novel the whole time. Yeah, so I think maybe Carmilla is maybe the first English composition of the vampiric literature. I'm looking right now to see if there's anything else.
I thought there was just like one more before it, just called The Vampire with a Y.
Vampire.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's how you
Basically.
spell it in a lot of European languages.
Yeah, and
Danes,
apparently
too.
the author sourced some sort of French report of a priest who like went and got rid of some vampires, and it was a report, like an actual report about vampires.
That's pretty nifty.
Abbot monk, Lorraine scholar.
Do you guys like first-person books?
I don't mind them.
I
Yeah,
personally
don't
fucking hate
mind
them.
them either.
Like,
Really?
Really?
I think it's because like probably some of the worst stories I've ever read were in first person. They happen to be fan fiction, but it's still unforgivable.
I think first person could be done well. I've read a number of visual novels written first person, and those could be done well in first person. I think
I just like this was the first time in a very long time that I like could get past the first person of this story, and it was the way.
Starship Troopers is first person too, I think.
What is?
Starship Troopers.
Oh, really? I never read that book.
Oh, it's good.
yeah. I don't mind first person. I understand that like for people who read a lot of books, it's like not common and not sort of a thing that happens, but I've read a good amount of first person fiction, and I think it can be done well. It almost lends a more personal taste to things.
In my eyes, first person almost always leads to like amateurish writing.
Maybe you should read some more visual novels, I think,
Oh yeah.
because the Japanese do handle first person pretty well, and it's much more common in Japanese literature. So it's not like we're here where you're only going to find first person fan fiction works. I'm sure there's other like classics written first person I'm forgetting to. Considering how Dracula is based on a real person, the bloodbath element was probably referenced an old female noble who bathed in the blood of virgins to stay young.
Yeah, I was gonna say that when you mentioned that, but I was muted and then the moment passed.
Oh.
But you know who he's talking about, right?
Yeah.
Like some countess, yeah.
Yeah.
Vampire tormented many of the inhabitants. Okay. So so it was sort of a report where a monk was investigating the so town inhabitants were talking about vampires and various occults, and the monk's like investigating whether these things are real or not. And then like he was told the story that a vampire was haunting him, and they found him, staked him, burned him to death, and beheaded him. And so then it was no longer haunting them, which is odious, I guess. I don't know.
Buffy and True Blood are better.
Buffy and True Blood. Is Buffy Yuri? I don't think so, right?
Buffy does have a lesbian character, yes, actually.
But she gets cucked, right?
I don't know. I never watched Buffy.
Anyone in chat watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer?
I mean, I watched the season, but that's too many years ago for me to recount it.
Yeah, I've never watched that show.
Might as well just be like, hey, chat, you ever seen Charmed?
Buffy is based and epic? Oh, shit.
I don't know. I think my respect is dropped for horse-wearing people costume right there.
You had respect for him before?
No, not really. Well, I mean, like I had like a neutral level. Is at 0. Now it's
Leah likes Buffy the Vampire? Oh, shit. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, I mean. All right, well, it's a shorter book, so it's a shorter discussion. What other books did you guys interested in lately?
I'm just waiting for the next book in the Stormlight Archive series.
Another long, like, autistic fantasy series?
You know it.
I want to read Dune and Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Guns, Germs, and Steel. That would be a meme book to do a show on.
Yeah.
Have you guys read that?
I've not.
I have not.
I've watched a documentary. I've not read it. We could do
I'm
that.
a history autist, so I love anything history. So
I mean, I like history too.
Let me check how long Guns, Germs, and Steel is.
Yeah, like if it's not too long,
I have it. It's like over 400 pages.
Oh shit!
Over how much?
Well, that'll take me some while. Yeah.
Like
480 pages apparently.
I mean, give me like 2-3 weeks. I could do it maybe.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to. The thing about reading a long book that you also dislike is at least Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life is short.
Yeah, you can't just read like 400-page books every week. I get that, but
I mean, I it's an interesting.
No, I mean I could, but I mean I read fucking 70s in a day, 800-page book.
Yeah, I like to read.
No fucking way, dude. I cannot do that.
I mean, that was neat. So I just sat down for like 14 hours and read a book.
Right, you have the time too.
Yeah, that's the only reason I couldn't read these books so quickly is because I have to go do things.
I have a job.
Yeah, I have to
wagey.
So.
Get in the cagey. Yeah.
But yeah, I'd be interested in Guns, Germs, and Steel.
All right, well, you guys could put it on the back burner and read it at your pace instead of rushing it. We'll find something else to talk about.
I'll buy a copy this week or something.
No, don't buy a copy. You're paying money to Jared Diamond.
I'll buy a used copy. How about that?
Good. You get it secondhand, just like GameStop. You can't give EA money. Go to your GameStop and pick up a copy. Call your Barnes & Nobles and ask if they have Battletoads.
I mean, I saw another book. What was it called? That was like released recently. That's a fantasy book. But I don't think that this would be the place to read it. It's probably just another nice long fantasy. Generic.
Yeah. That's the next thing I'm going to be reading is the Communist Manifesto, and that's probably not going to be a fun read. But I want to go through it.
It's not long. It's like 50 pages.
That's true. Not long.
We could do the Communist Manifesto, but that's like, I guess we could do that.
Yeah, you can count me out on that one.
Don't want to. What about you, Psychotic?
How long is it?
Let me
How
look
long
it up.
mine is. I got the copy right here. 120 pages is what I got here.
That's not bad.
It's a small book too, so it's probably.
And is that the one of like addendums and stuff?
I don't know. It's another one of the Penguin Great Ideas books.
Let me look that up.
Great idea there.
Right?
Well, Penguin is
doing Das Kapital after that one.
Penguin is sort of
that's a long one.
the normie philosophy publisher. It just publishes it in the most normie possible format.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got it for Christmas, so it's.
There's another book that I got that I'm actually really interested in reading. It's called When Paris Went Dark, and it's just all about the Nazi occupation of Paris. So I'm actually kind of interested in reading that.
When Paris Went Dark?
Yeah.
Paris Went Dark.
Yeah, the one I was talking about a minute ago, that it's called The Empire of Ashes.
Empire of Ashes.
I don't know. Looks like a dragon manga, dragon book. Who doesn't like
Dragons? You could read Aragon.
Oh yeah, we just hop right back on that.
Aragon, dude.
I already said last time I was on here that I read it.
So When Paris Went Dark is 480 pages, and then Empire, what is it called?
Empire of Ashes.
Empire of Ashes.
It'll probably be somewhere around 70s and like.
Are you going to be doing these at these time, Ospen? Maybe, maybe not. Depends on when people show up or want to show up. When it's convenient for them.
I guess
I prefer these times.
Yeah, Euro friends prefer these times. I haven't looked at my YouTube analytics to see like where my audience is for this channel.
That'd be a good idea to do.
Now Paris is getting blacked.
When Paris went dark. Once you go dark, you don't go back.
Only gets darker from here.
You should read The Secret History of the Jesuits. I'm sure Leo would love to discuss that one.
Yeah.
Paris is getting blacked. It's better for the EU. I don't know. I guess we all. That is the issue, right? We all have different book interests, and it's hard to align.
Stone Mexican guy suggested NOS 4A2 by Joe Hill.
What's it called?
NOS 4A2. It's like
NOS?
NOS 4A2. It's a license plate number. It looks at the cover, which is kind of weird. Yeah, it's kind of a shitty name for a book. It doesn't,
Doesn't roll off the tongue.
Yeah, just a suggestion. If you ever want to write a book, name it something that you can easily say to someone when you recommend it. Because if you have to be like, "Hey guys, have you ever read Wheel of Time #6? It's called Lords of the Fallen. Like, it's a really good book." You're not going to sell it. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work. Is that what it's called actually? Lords of the Fallen? Hold on.
I'm gonna try to find a shorter book, I guess. Well, let me look at what.
Oh, what about we talked about Spinoza? Ethics.
Oh yeah.
Because I ordered that one already, so I'm gonna read it. But
Lords of Chaos, excuse me.
Oh yeah, I already linked it in the channel. Let's see.
Which book here?
It's Schopenhauer's Philosophy. The Essays of Arthur Schopenhauer, Studies in Pessimism. It's more of a philosophy read.
You can count me out on that one too.
Only 44 pages. I think I'd have to read a bit more than the PDF I found. Then I don't know.
Yeah, it's short. It was more just one I had on my shelf that I hadn't finished that I wanted to finish. So that's why I mentioned it. So.
What does this note mean? Note on the sufferings of the world, the vanity.
I just copy pasted it.
Oh yeah, that's all the essays in the
Yeah.
Wonderful.
In the
In the Schopenhauer selection I found online for free. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard, man. People in chat are like, "Oh, Jeff, why don't you just like have 2 episodes a week?" Well, it's hard to get people to read books and meet on a given time. That's like difficult.
Listen, I've been on this show 3 times.
Yeah, you're pretty reliable.
Time already.
Mo is the second.
That's been a week.
Time.
Yeah, But now we're struggling to agree on another book. Our book club's in danger. Yeah, bye.
Okay.
Are we Daijobu?
All right.
You gotta dictate,
I
Jeff.
can make
You
another
gotta.
I haven't read this book yet either, but because I have like 50 books on my list. But how does everybody feel about reading Storm of Steel by Ernst Younger?
Storm of Steel.
Storm of Steel.
It's basically the diary of a World War I German soldier.
Oh,
Well, that does sound like it would be
I mean, I'd
interesting.
read it. Yeah.
And
why not?
it's
309
pretty
pages.
interesting.
much?
How many pages is it?
309.
309. That's still kind of long. Fuck.
Yeah, I'm looking for something around 200-ish. Be a decent amount.
I mean, I can read any of these books. You're just gonna have to give me like a week or two.
Yeah.
Yeah, you need to make some sort of schedule, Jeff. We need this planned out.
Well, that's what I'm trying to do now, but I'm trying to decide what you guys want to read.
Just doing it live
Okay.
on read the diary.
The Diary of Anne Frank.
But ironically.
I'm
Alright.
good on that.
How about 2 weeks from
no.
now, we do Guns, Germs, and Steel. And then this week we'll do a short book.
Guns, Germs, and Steel. Oh, you said it
Well,
was
this
500
week,
pages, right?
Sunday then, or
Yeah, next Sunday. So
I don't know. My schedule's always changing. I'll keep you updated on that.
Okay.
But
Next Wednesday or Sunday, whenever is convenient.
and if you want a short book, there's another one. Have you ever heard of Intelligence, All That Matters?
Oh yeah, you recommend that one before. Let me see how long that one is. We can
It's
read
like
that
70
one
pages.
for this week maybe, and then have Guns, Germs, and Steel as the larger book.
Yeah, I might need a little bit longer to read that, so I don't know. Let me see.
I mean, as long as I have one person to read it, you could just read it so you can get more out of the discussion, or just the stupid theories in Gun, Germs, and Steel.
This stream is a bully psyop aimed at ANCAP.
I wonder if he even watches.
I think he's gone. He's dead, Jim.
Yeah, he's just dead.
All right.
KYS.
So would you guys be interested in reading Intelligence, All That Matters? It's a book
It's like
about
70 pages long. It's very it's all about intelligence. It's history.
basically
social
defending
aspect of
IQ as a good measure.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'd read that.
I'll let you guys read that. I'll take my time and try to
Okay.
read
Gun, Germs, and Steel.
It's really easy. It just goes into types of IQ tests. It's history, it's social aspect, it's biology, and then just kind of wraps it all up into a nice little bow.
Okay, that sounds interesting because people
I
always
really want to read that.
always argue
Describe it at
about
least.
IQ autistically. So intelligence, all that matters.
Yeah, it's a great introduction to anybody. And I would say if you have any plans on reading the bell curve, read this book first because it'll prepare you for that book.
Oh,
I'm a dumb
All
guy.
right,
I don't
then.
need a book to tell me I'm a dumb guy.
Yeah, okay. So Stuart Ritchie's Intelligence, All That Matters. You guys down doing that within next week?
within next week, yeah.
All right, so next Friday? Is Friday just good for you guys?
Friday's good for me, as long as it's not earlier than this, because I kind of want to get home from work and relax before doing this.
Oh yeah. We could do it a bit later. I thought I was doing it earlier because I thought I didn't really know the time zone you were in. So I thought
Nice.
Euro was. We could definitely do it later. What about
A
you,
little
Sai?
bit later would be good.
I could probably just give me a time and I'll try and fit it in.
Friday, at noon.
Yeah, and you know what? Friday at noon's fine. I
Okay.
can do that.
All right, then it's settled. We'll do Friday at noon, Intelligence, All That Matters by Stuart Ritchie. And then the next week, playing by ear, we'll do Guns, Germs, and Steel, which is a meme book, but I think it definitely deserves an episode.
Okay, why is it a meme book? I don't really even know of it.
It's a book. It's a history book, but it's sort of used as sort of the apologist for all the why Europeans dominated everything.
Very environment, basically
pure
everything's
pure environmental theory hypothesis on everything, and so definitely all the privileged scholars take out their copy of Gun, Germs, and Steel whenever they want to have a discussion about history.
To be honest, I think it's like a really good companion piece to the Arthur Farrell's The Origins of War.
Maybe. Well, I mean, they cover different periods, kind of, but yeah,
different stuff. But yeah,
I'm actually gonna write that. Say that name again. Arthur.
That's the one we watched last time. Arthur Farrell's The Origins of War from the Stone Age to Alexander.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or 2 times ago.
Yeah, I remember that book now.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll
also a good book.
Aim for Gun, Germs, and Steel, and I'll put it on the schedule finally in the channel this time. Now we actually have a schedule.
And read Kingdom.
Read Kingdom.
Enough books now.
All right. We got it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We had a good little discussion on Carmilla, then a decent little bit of comfy scheduling discussion, and we'll see you next time for a little internet book club thing. I quite like doing this. Thanks for tuning in. See ya.
Bye.